Okay guys, so another rebuild video. I'm sure you're sick and tired of seeing Pro 15s by now, but thought since the mailman was kind today, got a few parts in the mail, I'd maybe share that with you guys, in case you're interested. So again, another Pro 15, whoop-de-friggin' do. Yeah, so we got a few parts to throw in there. Got new piston and sleeve, connecting rod, wrist pin, new glow plug, crankshaft. This engine already has a new crank. New crank bearings in it. It's only been run once, and that was just from that quick video you guys saw about a month ago. It was in the test stand with that big ass stinger pipe on it. So I thought, well, I'm gonna rebuild this one and just keep it on hand, or keep it in the spare bucket, whatever else, and go from there. Well, thank you for all the new subscribers. You guys are freaking awesome. I really appreciate that. Means a lot to me. And I'm sure most of you know this, but if you don't, now you do. I do have a Facebook group, actually. If you search for it, it's called Nitro, Diesel, Gas, RC, and More. And yeah, it pertains to basically anything nitro or gasoline, RC cars, or even the little model diesel engines that I play around with from time to time. Things like that. So if you guys want to post your 1/5 scale stuff, or you know your video of a friggin' Harley Davidson doing a burnout or something stupid like that, friggin' feel free to do so. Yeah, so that's my little group there. I don't have any editing software, otherwise I'd edit in a photo of what it looks like. But you guys can check it out. An awful lot of those freaking troll accounts lately, freaking going, adult content at this minute. It's like, oh yeah? Get fucked right off. How about that? Alright. So I'm going to pull this guy apart. This guy was put together. Most of you that are on my Facebook account, most of you that are on my Facebook, I should say, saw when I put this engine together out of junk parts a while back. And it's all stuff I found in the junk bin. And it did run. The compression's not, the compression's poor. The pistons got damage to it. It did run okay, but, and because we're replacing it, these parts here aren't going to be reused. They're just going to be like practice parts, basically. We're just going to pop this up with a flat screwdriver without stabbing yourself in the finger. So like I said, don't be taking engines apart with screwdrivers. These parts are junkyard parts, so I'm not worried about hurting them. We're not going to be reusing them. So in that case, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. That piston has already got, well, if I get it out here, the rod's completely junk. Well, it's got a lot of play in it, and there's got chips in the piston and all sorts of other shit. So yeah, don't go after me going, oh, I thought you said you shouldn't do that. Well, you shouldn't. End of story. And the crank is just, well, it's just old junk, right? So got a little bit of a clean out there. I'm going to be reusing the crank and another motor that I already have sitting off to the side here. That I won an eBay bid. And I got another Pro 15 for $7.50 and $10 shipping. So it should be here probably with Canada Post, next year sometime. I'm sure for those of you that live in Canada wouldn't get that reference, since Canada Post is the slowest postal service in the world. Slower than freaking molasses in the winter, so yeah. Anyway, I digress. Moving on. We have a brand new piston and sleeve for the Pro 15. A lot of people say, why do you like Pro 15 so much? Well, I get them for obviously very cheap, and the fact that short crank small blocks for RC10 GTs are getting tougher to find by the day, and they still make these things brand new, and the parts for them, and they're relatively inexpensive to rebuild. I think I got the piston and sleeve for this for, I want to say $32 for a piston and sleeve. I mean, shit, that's freaking cheap as chips, right? Not bad at all. So, Yeah. So I thought, okay, well, plus, I mean, now that I got that, I guess, what would you guys call that? Pink? Red? Pinkish? Reddish? Whatever. Cylinder head kind of makes the engine look cool. So, yeah, I got an SH carb on it, and which is right there. And I just need to get a new little rubber boot guy for it because that one's kind of disintegrated. Yeah, I mean, they perform well. They're cheap for parts. They made a zillion of them. They're pretty freaking reliable. So, wouldn't mind having one or two else in the spare parts bin there, right? Or the engine bin, which you guys have seen inside it recently. So, we got our new crank. And by short crank, what I mean is most small blocks will have a crank that looks like that. And the RC10s will take a short, little, tiny threaded section like that. And you guys can see. Yeah, so some of these cranks, like here's another Pro 15 crank. Some of them do have a notch in it. You guys can see that little notch there. I don't know what that notch is for. Maybe if anyone in the, that's watching would know, could chime in. I don't understand what it's for, but doesn't really matter to me. It's kind of, some of them have it, some of them don't have it. I don't know. I thought, yeah, well, you know what, whatever. I don't have to work today. I got a couple of chainsaws apart behind me there. Well, on the other side of the room, I got a MS201T that's sitting there. I'm just waiting on a new ignition coil for that guy and a bunch of other little freaking things, intake boot and whatever. So, whenever those come in from Fraser Valley Equipment, I will be putting it back together, maybe on video. What a pain in the ass to work on, I can tell you that. You could take the whole damn saw apart just for an ignition coil. Pretty crazy. Fun little saw though. They really rip when they're running good. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of oil here. So, those of you that were asking, and I will tell you, where do I get my after-run oil from? Why does it look red? What's different about it? Well, I'll tell you. I don't buy after-run oil at the hobby store because it's just, I'm not paying $9 for a little bottle like this. I've experimented with it for years, and the crank bearings in this block are brand new, so that's why I'm not replacing them. But anyways, so a lot of people asked, well, you know, what kind of after-run oil do you use? Where do you get it? Why is it red? Blah, blah, blah. Well, this is just a mixture of regular ATF, automatic transmission fluid, and 5W30 full synthetic. That's all it is. I think I've covered that before in another video, I believe. I could be wrong. I've been using it on and off for years and never had any sort of trouble with it. You just don't need to go flooding your engine with it every time you put it away like some people think you do, which is ridiculous, and you don't. Yeah, no, that's just what I use. I mean, you can, I think I keep mentioning, because people keep asking, you can use like Ingersoll air tool oils, absolutely fine to use. You know, there's all sorts of shit. This stuff is actually even okay because it's actually a lubricant penetrant rather than a solvent. It even says it's not a solvent. This stuff actually works pretty well for destroying rust and penetrating sticky motors. Works a hell of a lot better than WD-40. Someone actually did comment a while ago saying, oh, you say you don't use WD-40, I saw it in your video. Well, sure you did. I use it for what its intended purpose is. Exactly what it says in the can. Water dispersant formula 40. So when I wash an engine in the sink with hot soapy water, get this fucking bag open, I'll be doing perfect. So when I wash an engine in the sink with hot soapy water, I want to remove the moisture from it before I start putting shit together. And usually I either use a high purity alcohol that absorbs water, or I use WD-40 for that because it also absorbs and removes water. What it's exactly for. Water dispersant formula 40. Right, anyway, so hopefully that clears up some of that for you guys. We got our piston, and that's the clip side there. That side always faces towards the back of the block. Traxxas will never tell you that. So we got our new connecting rod here. I can't remember, I think this is a Kyosho connecting rod actually. I think it's for a 15GX or something, or ASP 15 something. I can't remember, but I have two of them and they fit the Pro 15s really well. So we're going to look for the tapered side. And by taper I mean, if you look, I know you guys probably won't be able to see it, but the bottom pin bore here, there's a taper, like a fluted side to it, that faces always towards the crank. So this way. right? So that little taper faces onto the crank. So that means that the piston faces the opposite way. So we put the piston right here. Of course, the crank with the tapered side faces, or the, yeah, whatever. Anyways, you guys get the idea. I'm gonna put some oil in there. Some people go, oh, I put my engines together with WD-40. Well, that's great. Good for you. I just hit all these little parts here, and I can't stress this enough, and I tell people this all the time. You know, these are the high stress parts of your engine, you know, especially with a new engine, a new build, or just any engine in general. It doesn't matter how big or how small it is. Those parts experience a shit ton of stress. And a lot of people have said, oh, I watched one of your videos, I replaced the connecting rod in my, or the piston and sleeve in my Pro 15, and then the connecting rod broke. Well, yeah, it will. When they get extremely worn out, let's see, do I have the old one out of my Pro 15 here? Yeah. So, you guys can see all that up and down slop in there? So what happens is that engine gets used to having all that slop in there. This is when I drilled a hole in the top of for extra oiling. What'll happen is when you get a new piston, it's all tight in there. You get all that pinch again, right? And all that high compression. And what'll happen is it'll just break the rod. It'll just wear it out extremely, extremely fast. So that's why when you replace your piston and sleeve, replace your connecting rod. You know, if you can, great. If you can't, well, run it, and hopefully if you can find an aftermarket one or something that'll fit, then great. But yeah, you generally want to replace that if you can. So we got our clip and the pliers. I'm gonna see if we can get this in on camera here, not make a total ass of myself in the process of trying to do that. These little clips are such a pain in the ass to get them in there. You gotta get the one side hooked, then kind of roll them in. If you're really good at it. Usually, if you're really careful, and you talk to it nicely, you can usually get them in the first shot. There we go. Okay, so our clip's in. I don't know if it's going to focus or you guys can even see that. I know my lighting in here isn't very good. That's why I do want my videos in my kitchen. Because the lighting in my house is awful. I'm sure you guys have heard that a million times by now. So the next thing you want to do, and I've explained this many times before, is you want to make sure that your clip is seated. And by seated, I mean there's a little groove in here, and you want to make sure it's actually sitting in there properly. So just from the back side, opposite to the clip side, you just push in there, and what that'll do is it'll put pressure against the pin and make sure that clip is seated. And then just make sure, you don't need to shove on it, but just, you'll hear it kind of go click like that, and you'll know it's in there. Because if it isn't, well, that clip will come out of there, and will kiss your freaking brand new engine goodbye. Right, so that wasn't too hard now, was it? Okay, so a little bit more oil up in that area. You could even use transmission fluid mixed with air tool oil. That works fine too. Basically any actual oil is what you're after. Alright, so we got some oil up in there. You're going to grab our block. We got our brand new crankshaft in there already. You guys just saw me do that. And take a little bit more of our oil, put some on the crank pin. Right there. I'm going to put some in there. Yeah, so, and then remember, the tapered side of the rod, the side with the little tiny chamfer on it, faces towards the crank. The side with the clip in it faces towards the back of the block. Not all engines have that clip in the back, like, well, they do, but it's, some engines are different than others, so just pay attention to what you're doing when you take them apart. And you're just gonna pick up the rod. Freaking cat hair. pick up that connecting rod. I know you guys can't see what I'm doing here. I'm trying to see as well. And should just be able to drop the rod right on to the crank. Spin it around, and then should just go right on. There you go. Just like that. This is kind of difficult. You have to kind of get it up around the top there, so it doesn't leave you really much room to work with. And I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, the SH18, I can't get the damn thing apart. It's so tight and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, you might be doing something wrong. If it doesn't need to be taken apart, don't take it apart. Some of them I've had are kind of tight to get the rod off the pin. It's just the way they are. Sometimes it can be from the rear crank bearing not be seating all the way forward. But I've never really had that issue. I think I had one that was a little bit problematic, but it took me a few seconds to work it out. So, I'm going to put some oil in the sleeve. A little on the outside, that just aids in it going in. And a lot of people think polishing the outside of a sleeve will do you tremendous gains. It doesn't do anything. Actually, when you polish the outside of a sleeve or screw around with it or change the finish, what'll happen is it'll actually mess up the clearance between the block and the sleeve, and you can get actually air leaks and blow by like that. So don't, if you can help it. I mean, if it's all covered in varnish, then use a little piece of Brillo or something like that. And just be very, very careful. Just enough till it's clean and it fits. Don't go any farther. Polishing it doesn't do shit. You'll go, you gotta polish the sleeve, you'll gain all kinds of power. You don't. Oh, just kind of gotta get that piston lined up in there. There we go. Just because everything's brand new and super tight, so I just gotta. There we go. Just wiggle it back and forth. There. Whoa. Yeah, you can tell where the pinch zone is right there. Because like I said, a lot of people take a motor apart and try to turn it over and go, holy shit, why doesn't it turn over all the way? It's super tight at the top. It's normal. Remember, it's a tapered bore. The top is smaller than the bottom. Don't freak out. But just a hair more in there. And the nice thing about the transmission fluid is it's a very good rust inhibitor. As I'm sure most of you that work on cars actually know, because if you have a transmission fluid leak, there will be no rust anywhere in that area. Yeah, so that's one thing there. Stuff works good for all kinds of stuff. And it's cheap, like I said. Just go and get yourself a bottle of each, just full synthetic 5W30. Doesn't matter what brand it is, doesn't matter any of that. Let's see here. Just got a freaking couple of these head screws are kind of a little bit tight fitting in there. Yeah, it doesn't matter what brand you use. It could be anything. Quaker State, Pennzoil, Mobil 1, whatever your favorite is. Doesn't really matter. Whatever's on sale at AutoZone or Canadian Tire, whatever you got, wherever you live, your auto parts store. Okay. So, our head gasket, head butter are there. And like I said, with that, just mix it 50-50, you're done. Doesn't matter. You can mix up a whole gallon of it if you really wanted. I mean, you're never going to use that much, but you can mix as much as you think you're going to need. I just take this bottle, fill half with transmission fluid, half with engine oil, cap it off, shake it, and be done with it. That's it, and that'll last me ages. Ages and ages and ages. Right. Cylinder head, and a lot of people ask, why do you spray stuff on the screws? That's because I don't want them going back in dry, is my whole point. Because remember, you're going steel to aluminum, soft aluminum. So you want just a little bit, just in case. Well, I mean, there should be no gulling or tightness or anything like that. That means something's wrong if you're experiencing that kind of shit. But I thought I'd just share with you a little kind of re on this engine here. It's going to be put into the spare motor bin, and then there's going to be another Pro 15 built once the other parts come in. Then the other one that's currently in my GT, I'm just waiting on a few parts for it. And I'm going to be porting one of them. I've already ported one block, kind of, just by farting around with it and kind of seeing what I can get away with. So, should be interesting. Crisscross pattern. Like I said, the end of my screwdriver here is very, very square, so it's hard to get it in. Because I just sharpened them. Or not sharpened them, but refaced all my screwdrivers on the grinder. Alright, perfect. Look at that. I'm going to stick on that back plate, and I'll stick in that glow plug. A lot of people ask me, what's the best plug for a Pro 15? The best plug for a Pro 15 is the LC3 or LC4. I only have LC4s on hand right at the moment. I'm waiting for my other LC3s to come in from Thailand. They are a high quality Japanese made glow plug. I don't use Traxxas plugs because they are just cheap Chinese plugs that they charge the same amount for. They don't last as long. I've had the LC series of plugs last friggin' years. Some of them I have so many gallons I couldn't count. And I've had, I think, the same plugs in some of the engines for the last 10 years. So, yeah, no, they're good, damn good plugs. And remember that the Traxxas engines all use a standard plug, which is long reach. The same thing, not an OS8, which everyone believes is the correct plug for everything, and it's not. Yeah, so let's see here. I don't know if I have... Oh, yes, I do. Okay, standard long reach plug, which goes in your Traxxas or a lot of other vehicles. This is an OS8. Look how much shorter it is. See that? So when someone goes, oh yeah, throw an OS8 in there. Figure out what your engine's actually supposed to take. Don't just guess. Because throwing the wrong plug in there, shiny, can create all kinds of racket. It'll lower your compression ratio. It'll cause incomplete combustion, all sorts of other shit to happen. So, oh, well, it runs fine like that. Well, sure it does. Maybe in your eyes it does run fine, but in reality, it probably doesn't run fine at all. So, yeah, that's a thing that people just for some reason just don't want to understand or listen to you when you say it. And just snug, click, there, torque to specification. Oh, so much compression, can't turn it over. Got our SH carb. It's already been cleaned. It's just a little bit stained. I'm just waiting on a dust boot for it. Swing. That guy goes. Some people say the SH carbs don't fit right. I think they fit fine. Yeah, they do fit fine. They fit absolutely perfectly. They can be a little bit... I'm just going to use these pliers to snug this bolt. I'm not tightening it because I got to have to take it apart again anyway. Or take the carb off anyway. So I'm just... using those just to snug it. Don't use pliers to tighten nuts and bolts. Use the proper sized wrench. I just can't find mine at the moment. But there it is. So there is a pull start on the way for this, and a one-way bearing, and it'll be ready to rock. And then the other Pro 15 that's currently sitting in the GT, which you guys saw me put the blue cylinder head on, that will be rebuilt when it finally dies, whenever the hell that is. I've just been waiting for some nice weather. Like I said, it keeps raining here and all sorts of other fun stuff. Now, oh, the collet's already in there. Got this, it's got to beat up a little MIP flywheel. I'm just going to stick it on there just for the sake of sticking it on there. Forgot. Crankshaft shim, important. If you don't put it there, see all that play? No good like that. No bueno. You stick that shim on there, it'll prevent that from happening. Get your collet and flywheel, and you stick her on like that. And you put your flywheel nut. These are just random parts I had laying around, so it doesn't really matter too much. There, good enough. It's not all the way tight, it's just sitting there for now. But, yeah, there you go. Freshly rebuilt. And like I said, I didn't replace the bearings on camera because I already replaced them at a earlier date, whatever. Replaced them a while ago, before I put this junkyard motor back together. But we're going to take this little wad here and just soak that. Yeah, this stuff, Lloyd's Move It. It's really good stuff. Doesn't hurt your hands as bad as WD-40 does. They actually use this stuff they use this stuff in actually the food industry. This stuff's actually very, very good. You know, they use it on rollers and chains and all kinds of shit. So it's a lot easier on your skin and a lot less toxic for you to be handling than something like WD-40, which is mostly a solvent kerosene base, which is highly penetrative, whatever the fuck, to your skin, penetrates your skin, and yeah, not very good at all. But there we go. All done. That just keeps moisture from getting in. There's one in there too. Probably even just soak that guy down a little bit. Just keeps moisture from getting in the engine, that's all. And then what I'll do after is I'll put this in a Ziploc bag, suck the air out, and put it into storage. But hopefully you guys found that fun, or interesting, or exciting in any way, shape, or form. Great. There you go. And for those of you that keep asking what this piston is for, this is actually out of my Still BR420 backpack blower. Those of you on my Facebook, seeing the photos of me rebuilding it. I didn't post a video about it because I forgot. And this piston looks fine. Doesn't look like there's nothing wrong with it. But the skirts are so worn out, because the owner was running 100-to-1 in it, that it sounded like an old diesel or like a paint can full of rocks. It was just rattling. The piston was like literally like this inside the cylinder. So it sounded terrible. It had lots of blow-by, and it was spitting and popping out the carburetor all the time. So I went and got a brand new Still piston, new rings, wrist pin and bearings, and all that other garbage, and new gaskets, and slapped it back together, and it runs absolutely beautiful. So some of you guys that have been watching for a while have seen it run, and one of these days maybe I'll post another vid about it. Anyways, guys, until then, hopefully you found that exciting or cool and whatever. Anyways, thanks for watching. Keep on burning nitro out there.